Now I'd like to ask for my co-hosts to come on stage. Grab a mic, ladies. So if you've had a chance to participate in any of our dialogues, you know that part of our hosting work is that our main job as hosts is to make sure that you are taken care of, like I said earlier. But in order to do that, we're setting a stage for how we're going to be together over the course of the next 2 days. And we want to give you enough information without it becoming a really kind of academic, let's read to you everything you could probably find on the internet all by yourself. Since everyone knows how to Google, we don't need to do that. But it is important for us to at least have some common language and to familiarize all of ourselves with some of the things that we talk about and the things that we say. And I had a chance to introduce myself already. They'll introduce themselves as well, and we're each going to share just a real short moment about what brings us to this work. So for myself, I come to this work because I felt really impacted by our statehood discussion series that we held during the state's 50th anniversary a few years ago. We had a chance to travel around Alaska, and we were just asking for Alaska Native perspectives on what that anniversary meant to our community. And everywhere we went, the issue of race, the issue of racism, discrimination and prejudice, maltreatment, really, was astounding. Each region expressed it differently, but it came up in every single region that we had a chance to go to, and not just in the discussion series, but for other meetings, it came up. And we were able to put together a different way of trying to have a conversation about racism in Alaska. One that was built off of our own Native values. One that was built off of the philosophies and principles that our elders and our ancestors created and crafted for us to thrive in this land. And that's what called me to this work, to be able to bring the knowledge of our people, our experience, into the conversation, to make it a place for all people to be welcome, to honor everybody's experience. That this is not a place of proving that racism exists. This is a place of Alaskans sharing their story about their life and about listening to each other and about hearing what they have to say and about being in agreement that we can and must do better than we are doing today. And that is what gives me passion and inspiration every day to be part of this work. And it's a huge honor and blessing to do so. Everyone has their own mics.
Ufla Lotak, good morning to you all. My name is Darlene Trigg. I'm Iñupiaq. My family comes from Shishmaref, Wales, and Little Diomede, but I was born and raised in Nome. And I am the social justice manager for the First Alaskans Institute, and I'm responsible for the Advancing Native Dialogues on Racial Equity project in our offices. And what calls me to this work, first and foremost, is my family. I am a mother of 3. One of my children is here today, and she is giving me the gift of a grandchild very soon. So I feel very compelled to make sure that this state is a good state for them, that this community of people that surrounds them all the time has an understanding of who they are and that they have a place where they're cared for and loved. I am a wife of a non-Native man, and our time together has been one of growth, of coming into an awareness together, and I am so appreciative that this project has been one where my family has been embraced, and I have so much love for everybody who's been a part of it, because you've touched my family in different ways. I was not satisfied with the way that my family was being treated. That's the truth. And this was an opportunity for me to make a difference, not just in how we are with one another, but it was an opportunity to start thinking about how our systems can change, getting into the institutions and making sure that they were held accountable to the things that they had control over, and really helping people come into a level of awareness about the reality of our state. And that's why I'm a part of this project. I think that we can do something, and it's going to be big, and it's going to make it better. That's why I do this.
Hoka koyana tailu no makiusten agaslaugo. Mamterich lakamiungo, Queen Haramiungo. Good morning. I'm so excited to see everyone. My name is Andrea Sanders Agashak. I was born and raised in Bethel. My family comes from Quinhagak. Ham and Katie Cleveland are my grandparents. Stella Cleveland and Brian Sanders are my parents. I'm the director of the Alaska Native Policy Center at First Alaskans Institute, and I'm also a former intern. I'm an alumni of our internship program. I think about what brought me to this work, and I have to go back to, as a teenager, feeling supported and feeling loved in the community that I grew up in. And it's great to see so many faces from Bethel and from my region here today. Growing up in Bethel, being half Native and half white, I was just like most of my community. And the people who live there really respect and honor the Iñupiaq culture. I joke that my non-Native uncle, he's more Iñupiaq than I am because he's been married to a woman from St. Mary's, and he's really taken on the lifestyle and the values of Iñupiaq people. And I think that's quite common in our region. But when I was 15 and we moved into Anchorage, and I was thrown into the education system here in Anchorage, and learning about discrimination, and learning that I had to fight through the system in order to get into the classes, in order to get the college preparation, in order to study abroad. As a Native woman from Bush, Alaska, I had a big label on my head that I didn't know I was walking around with. And I was becoming an advocate as a young woman. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know the terminology, but I knew what was happening wasn't right. I knew I had to keep fighting to get the doors open that I knew I was prepared to walk through. But being from Western Alaska, they wanted to put me into a track that I knew wasn't right for me. They wanted me to stay in the system that I knew wasn't set up for me to succeed. And so from there, I constantly was running into these walls. And I knew it wasn't right. And it wasn't until I went to school on the East Coast and then worked in DC where I started realizing the people who are making decisions on our behalf have no idea who they're representing. They're not in touch with us. They're not relating to the things that we're struggling with on a day-to-day basis. They're making decisions blindly. And it got me down this path of wanting to work in policy, wanting to affect change through the policy lens. And I'm blessed to work with these folks in the Alaska Native Policy Center. We do it in a different way. We do it in a way where the community members are the experts. All of you here, in addition to the elders who are here, I love that there are children here. The children, the young babies even, they're a part of this movement. And they're the ones we're fighting for. And that's what I really love about this organization is we look to you as the experts. We look to you to set the vision, to help us in this charge, to link arms. And that's really what brought me to this work. I think that's the foundation of it, is like Darlene was saying, looking at the institutions, looking at the systems, knowing they can be better, they can serve us better, they can be more in touch with what it is we need on the ground. So I'll leave it at that.
Drop the mic. Man, I say it all the time, but it's so true. I get to work with rock stars. As I was reflecting on what brings me to this work, I also was thinking about my family. My family is from Iñupiaq. I'm Jorie Paoli. My grandparents are Stanton and Irene Kitchtag. My parents are Doug and Vernita Herdman. And I was thinking recently about the gift of the internet. Every once in a while, I'll do a search for my grandparents just to see what else comes up. And recently, a blog post came up of a researcher that had traveled to Iñupiaq and spent some time in the village talking with folks. And one of the things that she wrote about was markers that she would see in different places in the village where there were stones that were stacked up on top of each other. And so she was asking different people what that meant. And in her blog post, she was talking about speaking with my grandpa, who at the time was 88 years old. And she said that he thoughtfully looked at it and he said, "Those have been here long before my time. I'm not really sure what they meant. I feel like my elders tried to tell me, but I was too focused on school." And in her post, she talks about how she could see a twinge of regret in his voice, that he didn't have that knowledge to share. And I think about the voice of my grandma. In 1967, she wrote a letter to the editor, "The Status of Alaska Natives." And in it, she was talking about sending her kids, my mom, my aunties, my uncles, to boarding school, and what that meant to her as a mom. That she had to send her kids away, and when they came back, they were different. And that touches me in a different way now than it ever did, because now I'm a mom and I have 4 kids. And I think about the sacrifices that our grandparents, our great-grandparents made because they were told that to give a better life to their kids, they had to go and learn another way that was not our way. To be successful, they had to speak English. To be successful, the focus had to be on academic studies through a Western lens. I think about that, and I think about the loss that I feel. That I don't have my language right now, yet, to pass on to my kids. Later on today, you'll hear from Jossie, and I saw a tweet recently that he had posted out, and it said, "Knowing your language and culture is the new rich." And I really believe that. Because there's so much wisdom and knowledge and love that's trapped within our languages and our traditions that I really wish that I could access right now. And I'm going to continue, it's going to be my life's work to continue to connect to those. Not only for me, who grew up in Anchorage, spending my summers in Iñupiaq, growing up here feeling ashamed of being Native and feeling flattered when someone said, "Wow, you're really smart for a Native person." Feeling flattered when someone said, "Wow, you're pretty for a Native girl." The fact that I had internalized my shame of being Native so much because of everything around me and everything that said that being Native is not as good, that's part of what drives me for this work, because I'll be damned if my kids feel that shame. Not only for us, but because within our cultures and our traditions, we have wisdom to share that can make this world a better place. And I believe that for all of our cultures. So that's why I do this work. Because I've got great-great-great-grandkids down the way that I want to be standing proud to be Iñupiaq in any other culture that they're part of, to be proud of who they are and feeling like they can bring their whole self into any space and they'll be valued for that. Iñupiaq.
I think I speak for everyone who just got to listen to these 3 amazing women articulate why they come to this work. I think our work here is done. You guys are amazing. Goodness sheesh. The four of us today, along with the rest of our First Alaskans Institute team, are going to be interchangeable in terms of kind of telling you where we are at in the work that we are going to be doing together. Whether it's me or Jorie or Andrea or Darlene, we will be helping guide us all through this work. So whichever one is up here, whichever one has stepped into their auntie shoes and is bossing us around, that's the best one to listen to. So our goal is to make sure that we all have an incredible time. I want to pick up on something that was also shared. Again, you guys are the experts. And we don't come to this work with an expectation that the people here have to prove themselves to us. And we ask that you also come to this work without that expectation, but rather that you come to this work ready to roll up your sleeves, ready to hear the challenges and issues and the stories shared by your colleagues, and to think forward about the solution rather than dwell on either what it is that you don't feel is valid in their story. We don't get to be the judges of other people's truth. In this work, all of our truths matter, and we're asking you to make room in our space and our dialogue and our discourse and our learning with one another to really open up yourself, to think about what it is that you're hearing from your fellow Alaskans and be able to start putting some really kind of tangible and tactile and maybe perhaps even tactical ideas and solutions forward so that we move from just talking to a place of learning and engaging through the sharing that we're doing and the stories that we're hearing from one another. And I can't thank you enough for taking time to do that with us, with each other, and with our team at First Alaskans Institute. So Ganesh Chish Hawa to everyone for that. I think we have a couple of things that we need to share in terms of our process, and then we're going to get into our first keynote of the day.
In that spirit, I'll be the first auntie. You'll see posted around the room are posters that say our agreements. Really, these are our values. We would like to set the tone for the way that we are with each other over the course of these 2 days. And we'd like to ask you to join us and help us in the kind of tone that we want to set so that we can be building on this movement toward equity for all Alaskans. I know that's why we're all here. So to do that, we would like to be intentional about our space. So with our agreements, the first and foremost is always in every chair a leader. You've heard it said, the wisdom is in the room, and we want to tap into that. Every single one of you are the experts of your experience, of your truth. And what you have to share will help the space, will help grow understanding of how we can make this movement toward racial equity bigger, better, more awesome, so that in the future we don't have to talk about this, right? We ask that in this space, we speak to be understood. And actually, I heard Fred share about this when he was on the stage. This is about being careful with the words that you choose to use. That your goal is really to help others understand your perspective and where you're coming from and your experience and why you feel that way. But the other side of that is listen to understand. You really want this to be a space where you're curious, particularly when we have those differences in our experience and our values. So it's an opportunity to understand, why do you feel that way? Why do you feel that way? That's so different from the way I think about the world. It's a chance to learn about how someone else thinks about the world and try and bridge that difference. We ask that you be present and engaged. I look around the room and I'm just filled up looking at all of your beautiful faces. I'm so excited that all of you are here with us, every single one of you. We want to make the most of our time, and so we ask that you be engaged in the conversation with us. that you listen to each other, and we create that kind of space. Along with that is valuing our time together. This really speaks to the value of wanting to hear from every person that's here, that together we value what every person has to share. And so if you're like me, I can get really wound up and I can find myself dominating a conversation when I'm really on fire about something, and this is one of the topics that I am definitely on fire for. I ask that you, like me, rein yourself in to create space for other people to be able to share. We need your help in that. This is a safe space for meaningful conversation. When we take notes, we don't attribute quotes to folks. We ask that you do the same. You'll see on your tables there are pieces of paper, and we'll tell you a little bit more about things to do with those to kind of like harvest the conversations that we'll be having. But we ask that you also uphold non-attribution, because really what's most important is that we have the conversations that we need to have. That being said, we are being webcast. We have lots of folks here connected up to social media, sharing awesome stuff. We've got hashtags, Racial Equity 2016 and Andore 2016. We want you to use those. But if you're quoting someone, unless it's someone on stage, because this is fair game, I think, but if you're quoting someone, ask their permission first. We'll be talking about and articulating the challenges that we face, and that's an important part of knowing what we're up against. But in this time, we want to move from identifying what that is to what's it going to take to change it. That's why we're here. We've got the experts in the room. Let's make the most use of our time. So we're not going to stay mired in that space of challenges. We want to move to what is it going to take to make a change that's really going to make a difference. Takest thou hats off? This is in recognition that so many of our folks wear many, many, many hats. You may have many titles: mother, community member, sister, daughter, titles from your organization. We ask that you not limit yourself by representing one of those facets of yourself. Take your hats off, join the conversation from your entire lived experience. That way we can get the most from your experience. Our value of humor helps us. Something I love about our people, and it's, I think, pretty universal amongst many cultures, and that is humor is a way of laughing about the absurd. It's a way of connecting with each other in a different way. It's to help alleviate tension when we need to, and we want to welcome that into this space, that we can laugh together, and that's another way of growing our kinship with each other. We are responsible for our experience. Every single one of us is responsible for the experience that we have in this space. I know there's no one in this room that would do this, but we all know that one person who will come to a summit, who will come to a meeting, to a conference, and they'll be on their phone under their table, texting, Facebooking, checking email, or getting up and leaving the room to go and do something outside and kind of popping in and out, or even they're physically present. They're sitting next to you. They're not on devices, but they're clearly not present. They've got something else going on in their head. And then at the end of the meeting or the convening, they're like, that was a waste of my time. I didn't get anything out of that, right? I know no one in this room is like that. But we ask that you, coming into this experience with us, be intentional about the experience you want to have. Because I promise you that if you are engaged with each other and really listen to what everyone here has to say, you're going to be filled up and inspired and motivated. But you have to be really present for us to do that. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. We're going to be talking about tough things over the next 2 days. And we have to if we're going to make a change. So if you need to take a breather to take care of yourself, you know what you need. If you see, I'll ask everyone's help here. If you see an elder who needs water, coffee, go and get it for them. Take care of them. That's what we do. I would also say, if you see anyone who needs help in any way, whether it's just a hand to let them know that you're there, if they're sharing something that's hard, or just taking care of them, that's the space that we want to create. If you have any questions, all of our First Alaskan staff are wearing kasbaks, atikluks, like this. You can grab any of us at any time, but particularly for the 2 days, we are your conference hosts. So these are the agreements that we'd like to use to set our time together. Do these seem like a good way to go into the next 2 days? Yeah? I'm so glad you think so. Because I'm going to ask for your help to uphold them with each other. Can you help me do that? Can we uphold our agreements with each other? Awesome.
Wow, I don't think we've ever gotten applause for our agreements before. That's really cool. So just to give you a little more information about the project that we're working on, I'm going to give you just a brief overview. We are in our second phase, but our first phase of the project was Alaska Native Dialogues on Racial Equity, and it had 2 goals. The first goal was to elevate the conversation about race in our state by having a conversation, by having the conversation with intention and not around some sort of event that kind of elicits emotions out of us. A conversation that allows us to start thinking about what we can accomplish with one another. But we also wanted to advance policy solutions in that first phase of the conversation. So we posed the question, what would a racially equitable constitutional convention look like? Knowing that when the Constitution was created, there was only one Alaska Native in the room, and that the rest of the delegates were predominantly white males, and that did not reflect the beautiful diversity of our state. So we posed that question, what would a racially equitable constitutional convention look like? And we were amazed at the results of that first phase. We saw so many people come together to start talking about what can we do to work together? How can we advance policy solutions? How can we start thinking about this differently? What can I do? It was amazing. In between the first phase and the second phase, the organization did do additional work. They trained up some more folks on how to have these healing dialogues and moved into that second phase with a visionary council who really wanted to advance a collective impact project. And that collective impact project has 3 focus areas. It allows us to really think strategically about how we can advance racial equity in our state. Those 3 areas are in education, advocacy, legal advocacy, and public perception. So we started thinking about what we need to accomplish in those 3 areas to make Alaska a place where equity is a shared value. And a part of that was bringing us together here for this summit. So I really want to acknowledge our visionary council members. We have them in the space with us. They're the first people that we list as you open up your program guide. So if we have any visionary council members, we'd love to acknowledge you. If you could please stand. We also have a cohort of hosts. These are the people who go into our communities and host these conversations. We have officially, I think we're at 54 hosts for our project. If we have any host members, if you could please stand. These are the folks who really take the time to go into our communities, put themselves in situations that aren't always comfortable to help a community come together around this difficult topic of race. We really want to love you guys up while you're here. Thank you so much for all that you do. Iñupiaq.
One of the realities that we live with in this state is that talking about racism causes people's stomach to tighten. Now, we have a lot of people who have been working in equality, racial justice. We have a lot of people who've been working in social justice who are present with us today. And we have a lot of people who are working in areas where it's really clear to them that there's something going wrong in the system for all of the work that's being done, and perhaps the good intention and the goodwill of the people populating the systems. But for some reason, we have Alaska Native people and people of color still overrepresented in too many areas. And if you're a person working in those systems and you're wondering, you know, we want to make a difference, we want to do it better, is there a way to perhaps see the world a little bit different from the view of the people who are being served or being held, who are Alaska Native or from different and diverse cultural backgrounds, people of color in this state, to learn better what it is that's causing this systemic issue or problem. Everybody in this room is at a different place on the spectrum of understanding what racial equity means to you, what racial equity can mean to your community and for your work, what it can mean to Alaska. Recently, I had an opportunity to go back and thank a young man who kind of sparked this phrasing for us in terms of our work around racial equity during one of our dialogues. He's a young leader from Southeast, and we had a dialogue down there, and it was myself, one of our trustees at the time, and our current Lieutenant Governor, Byron Malott, and one of the original delegates to the Constitutional Convention, Vic Fisher, who were speaking and sharing kind of our story, our perspective of Alaska's 50th anniversary and what it meant to us. And we would share that so then we could kind of open up a conversation with the communities. And this young man waited. There was probably, I don't even know, there was probably like 30 or 40 people who wanted to speak before him. And he waited patiently for all the elders to speak, for everybody else who was there who wanted to speak and share their perspective. And he got up and he came to the microphone and he said, I think we need to get rid of this term equality. I think we need to start fighting for equity. We need to start fighting for equity because equality has left us outside. Equality means that as Alaska Native people, we have to give up everything about who we are in order to achieve somebody else's idea about what equality means. And he said, it's not working for us, it's not working for our people. So we need to give up on this idea of equality and fight for equity so that we can bring our whole selves and our people forward and not have to leave ourselves behind in order to have a place at the table. And in that moment, Vic Fisher responded to him and, you know, the work that he had been involved in terms of equality. He said, we can't give up on it. We can't give up on this notion of equality. And that really sparked a different way of looking at what we're confronting. Instead of trying to break into something that doesn't belong to us, the idea and the concept and the notion that equity belongs to all of us and allows all of us to bring ourselves forward into this work of making Alaska a better place. So that really was kind of the undergirding of the development and evolution of this whole process. There was room for both, but there's not room any longer for an Alaska that does not open up and embrace all the cultures that now call Alaska home. And the only people who can change that are us, being able to be brave and have those conversations. And so I really want to call out that it takes a great deal of courage to have these conversations and to be real about them. It's really easy to dwell in the space of my opinion. It's really easy to dwell in my experience. So this is mine. So, I've never experienced racism, so therefore it doesn't exist. There's just no room for that anymore. We live in a completely different world. And the world that we want is like Jorie described, that our children will be proud of who they are and bring everything that they are in full force, in all of its glory and all of its beauty, into making this place theirs. So for us, one of the things that we do in our work as well is that, there's a lot of people who like to use the term devil's advocate. I'll just play the devil's advocate. You guys, I know no one here uses that word or that phrase, but in our work, what we do here and what we're asking you to be a part of is don't blame it on the devil. If you personally feel something and you're worried about it and you're like, well, I know some of my family members or some other people they're not gonna like this or they're gonna be uncomfortable with this. You don't need to put a facade up of somebody else and a hypothetical of somebody else. Speak from your experience. Share your story. We're not looking to be, we're not here to do racism 101. We're not here to make people feel guilty or feel bad. We're here to learn. We're here to make things better. And in order to do that, we're all gonna take our ears and stretch them so that they're bigger and we can hear each other better. And on behalf of all of us, we cannot wait to do that with all of you. So, shoutout.